This is the podcast overview for Chapter 7, Substance Use and Abuse. So, we're going to start out by explaining the differences between substance use and abuse. The two are different. And then once you understand that, you'll be able to look at how addiction and dependence operate. So, here's where we get into the abuse of with addiction, and then physical and psychological dependence, as well as social factors that contribute to dependence. So it's not just a chemical dependence on a drug or a substance, but there are a lot of social factors that go along with that. Who is in your family and your friend circle that might be contributing to dependence, issues in your environment, and so forth. And once you understand that, you'll then be able to explain how people can avoid withdrawal. Understanding how a chemical operates in the body, and what people try to do to avoid withdrawal is how one is led into dependence on the substance. And this is the primary reason why individuals get addicted to a substance, is they don't want to go through the withdrawal symptoms. And the minute they start feeling those withdrawal symptoms, there is a strong desire to want to use whatever the substance is again. And there are a lot of substance related cues and different expectations that contribute to dependence. There are things in the environment that cue people to using, whether it be a place that you're going to or visiting or hanging out at, a workplace establishment, home environment. A lot of these things can have cues that sort of keep the person using. And a lot of these things play a role then in a person relapsing once they are no longer physically addicted. They might be psychologically drawn to those cues or their expectations, and that might lead them back to using. Once we've kind of gotten through the substance use and abuse patterns and logistics, then we'll start with tobacco and spend a segment on smoking tobacco, be it cigarettes, be it e-cigarettes. What are the patterns of a smoker, as well as gender and sociocultural differences in smoking. And I would say even since this book was published in 2017, it's only been 3 years, these trends have radically changed, mainly because just in the past 3 years, the trends with e-cigarettes have changed substantially. We're now seeing people smoking at even younger ages, and smoking more because of the concentrations that can be had in the e-cigarette devices that kids are using. The addiction is stronger, faster, and has such far-reaching effects. So I would say that the book isn't as current when it comes to that aspect of smoking. But we'll look at people's reasons generally for smoking. What are they? Some might surprise you. The addictive effects of nicotine and how it contributes to poor health, and then specifically what diseases are associated with it. This is going to be important information that you're going to want to tie into your understanding of the respiratory system when we look at the different disorders of the lungs, specifically what diseases can occur in the lungs, largely many of them due to smoking. Then we'll move from smoking and tobacco to talk about alcohol use and abuse, kind of define some terminology, looking at problem drinking versus binge drinking, and then alcoholism. And there's various subcategories that fall under each of these. Binge drinking has a specific definition. What does that look like? What does that encompass? Same thing with problem drinking. What are people's reasons for drinking? You'll find some common ones, social inhibition, wanting to be more friendly and not feel inhibited when out with friends, or sometimes just doing it because everyone else is. That's more for the young people, but also for adults. It's cool for everyone to go out after work for a drink, or you have a really stressful job, and so you go out after to kind of unwind. And this can often be the first step into problem drinking. We see binge drinking being more in college age population, where you're drinking large amounts, maybe every weekend, but not during the week. But these are two huge precursors to alcoholism. And in fact, the correlation is quite high in those who binge drink in college and those who become alcoholics later in life. So some of those stats I think might surprise you. We'll look at the different developmental aspects of drinking and the role of reinforcement and substance-related cues. Our environment sadly reinforces drinking very much so. When we see commercials in the media and we see football games, sporting events, everyone's always drinking. If you're having a good time, you must be drinking. Drinking is always associated with a good time, and we see that from a very young age. I know households where drinking is a part of every social gathering. Parents are drinking every time they have friends over. And this is what kids see from a very young age, so they come to associate drinking with being fun and cool, and this is the environment that they're in, so it's largely reinforced. And then there's a lot of substance-related cues around that, cues that cue people into drinking. We'll look at the health hazards associated with drinking, like how can it affect your health, and illnesses and so forth. And then the latter half of, the latter third of the chapter will go into drug use. We'll be looking at detailed programs targeted at the prevention of substance use. This is largely health policy and health promotion, community wide types of preventative strategies targeted at youth of various ages, different areas, different communities, and what those programs entail, how successful they are or are not. And so definitely public policy and different legal issues surrounding substance use. The role of health promotion and education in substance use, and then spend a good deal of time looking at various categories of treatment for substance use. This class activity doesn't apply to you. Since we're an online class, we're not doing this. But in the book, you'll actually see a lot of different examples of types of treatment used to treat all kinds of substance abuse. So not just drug use, but alcoholism and nicotine, tobacco. Look and see, what are the pros and cons of each? What are people using the most? What works the best? And kind of the overarching answer is that it's kind of a combination of many. Usually a person is in a variety of different programs to help them, get clean. And then lastly, why is relapse a problem and how can it be prevented? We know relapse is a huge issue. The number is quite high of individuals who get clean, get sober, and then go back to using. And it usually has to do with a lot of what we talked about here, substance-related cues in their environments and different expectancies. If you're a user and you get clean and you go right back into the environment that prompted you to use in the first place, well, it doesn't take, a well-educated person to figure out that that individual is going to struggle. If they're hanging around the same friends or family members who are also still using, they're going to be tempted to want to do that. And it's almost always a given that that's going to happen. but there are some strategies that can help prevent that, and that's outlined in the chapter. And so I talked a little bit about this, but again, with the respiratory system, just understanding the mechanical processes of respiration. Okay, so first part of this module is understanding how we breathe. How does it work? What parts of the lungs, the esophagus, all of the physiology of the body, what's involved when we breathe, and then how can that become affected when we're smoking, when we're doing things that are going to damage the ability of our anatomy to do its job. And then lastly, when that happens, how can it also affect other systems of the body? So that gives you a good overview of the chapter.